The 1975 Notes on a Conditional Form.
Was it that bad?
It was critically received very negatively at the time. It's the band's longest album, but it's been a few years now, so we thought we'd go over it track by track and discuss the album and see if we really think it deserves the hate it got. Tim, do you want to kick things off?
Can do. First off, we go into the track The 1975, and this is technically featuring Greta Thunberg.
See, I wouldn't really spend too much time on this one. I think this is more... Do you know what? I actually respect the band for putting Greta on there and speaking about a matter that a lot of people care about and that they clearly care about.
I didn't rate it too much, but I thought it was a cool thing to try, and, you know, they were going for something a little bit different with the opening to this album, but we can move off it pretty quickly.
The first proper track is People, which to me sounded nothing like any 1975 song I'd ever heard in my life. It's like pop, punk, hardcore rock. What did you think of this?
It works nicely as a contrast from the first track if you're listening to this as a full album, and it was not what I was expecting from this album whatsoever.
I think we'll probably say that a lot of times. There's a few moments throughout this where you go, what? Is this the direction they're going in? But I really liked People. I thought they did a good job because the 1975 aren't heavy in any sense on any of the previous records. What did you think of this as a heavier song?
It stands up. It's not terrible. It really isn't terrible. And one good thing for me is that Matty manages to make his voice not sound like his voice, which for me is a big thing, as my biggest gripe with the 1975 is Matty Healy's voice. So for this track, I was like, you know what? Kudos to the man.
We have a little interlude, which is called The End Music for Cars. It's not really a proper track, so we'll jump straight into Frail State of Mind up next.
Funky intro. A very, very funky intro. I really liked the reworked breakbeat that they had throughout the track. I thought that was very cool. And the beat switch up that happens towards the end, I was like, yeah, come on.
I really like this. Gets you moving your head. Feels like it's one you could have a bop to live, and I have on many occasions. The thing with this is as well, if you compare the vibes of People to this, we've already gone in two completely different directions.
The only downside for me is, regardless if it was Matty or not, the vocals on this track really don't hit it right, and there's a couple of ad-libs in there, a bit of, I don't really know what they were trying, didn't really work for me, but the beat and the underlying instrumental, absolutely fantastic.
Okay. We have another interlude in Streaming, and then we go into The Birthday Party, which for me is more like a spoken word song, if anything. As you know, there's some topics touched on that are quite cool, but I just quite like this. It's calm, relaxed, easy vibes.
The track does not do a whole lot for me, and I'm really put off by the talky kind of slam poetry delivery. And again, it just doesn't hit right for me.
Oh, you see, I quite like this, but we'll move quickly off it onto Yeah, I Know, which is a more electronic track. Tim, how do you think they managed that?
It's a bit of a nothing track in the album as a whole. There's not really too much going on. It's a cool beat, but for me, the majority of the track is forgettable.
Yeah, I thought with this one, out of the electronic style tracks on the album, this was one of the worst. I think it's quite repetitive. I think the chorus is used a bit. You just hear Yeah, I Know loads of times. It's not a horribly produced track, but in comparison to the rest of the album, I think this is bottom tier.
The word experimental is probably perfect for this song, and unfortunately, I just don't think they experimented well enough.
And to be honest, when we move on to the next track, Then Because She Goes, guitars and stuff are back. It feels more like what you would expect from a 1975 song, but I don't think this is a strong track either.
So this is the first track that I would say is a classic, the 1975 track, and I don't really think I need to say more than that. It is just what it is. It feels very phoned in, but moving on that, we go to Jesus Christ 2005, God Bless America. Off the bat, what is that title?
I don't know. I don't have an answer for that. But the track itself is the first acoustic track on the album, and I quite like it. I think the dynamic between Matty and a female vocalist is good, and being a bisexual male, I quite like the topic that they're talking about.
Is it a religious song? What's going on? I couldn't figure it out. It felt slightly sarcastic, and the lyrics, in love with Jesus Christ, he's so nice.
Yeah, that is a bit of a cringy one. No, but I think it's from the point of view of someone that's religious but gay.
Right.
Because
okay.
when the female vocalist is coming in, she's talking about like her neighbor or friend or something that she sees, and then she masturbates when she leaves. But it's about like being gay but still being religious, I think.
Right. I mean, for me, the top of this song, I would just say is boring.
I quite like it. I quite like it. Roadkill is up next. This feels super American.
So with the title of Roadkill, I kind of felt like there'd be more going on with this because there's many other songs called Roadkill out there, and they're all a lot more upbeat and, a bit more chaotic. This is all right, but I don't really have a whole lot to say about it.
Yeah, I thought this was, again, more of an experiment. It felt a little bit country, if anything, but it did have me bobbing my head in moments. It wasn't a bad song, but it's not going to get like a 10 out of 10.
Moving off that, we have Me and You Together song, which off the bat, again, terrible song title. I just don't like some of the song titles on this album.
But what if him and her were together?
Song.
It's great, this. I love
this
song. It
doesn't need the word song at the end, though, does it?
But let's talk about the song itself, because for me, out of this entire album, this is the best indie rock song available.
So this feels like the last couple of songs, they kind of go through themes on this album, and it seems like this is where they're moving into, a different realm. But I do feel like that it has a purpose, even though some albums, you get songs that sound very samey, and you think, all right, what's going on here? This felt like it was kind of setting the track list, and it feels like you're kind of going through like an LP of sorts, and they're changing things up as you go through.
Yeah, it's weird because there's so many different vibes on this, but it does still flow as an album, which is quite hard to achieve when there's so many different styles of music. But what did you think of this as a song?
It's all right.
Oh, I thought this was an indie bop, man. This is so good. I would argue this is probably my favourite song on the album.
You reckon?
Yeah, I just love the guitar riffs.
I feel like you already know which one's my favourite song.
Yeah.
Well, we'll get to it. But moving off that, we've got I Think There's Something You Should Know.
This completely changes it again, doesn't it? But I thought this was very good, very well produced, and was just a cool dance anthem.
So this merges the past two, I want to call them themes, where they had the electronic kind of intro tracks. Then we went on to more melodic and calm vocals and more chill songs. This feels like a culmination of those two styles in one. And it works nicely to go from those first couple into those ones. And then this comes in and says, look, here's a culmination of all of those together. I didn't hate it.
I love this. I thought there was a nice little... Like, even within this song, and this kind of proves what you were saying, there was a few different switches where you were like, ooh, and I think this is an absolute banger. Up next, Nothing Revealed / Everything Denied. What did you think?
Whew, I liked this song. I really like this song. Lo-fi hip-hop vibes mixed nicely with gospel, and it works. It fucking works.
It's just banging, isn't it? And you wouldn't have expected this ever coming into it. And it's quite funny, actually, listening to this from your point of view, because you've liked the songs that I didn't expect you to like in many ways. I didn't think you'd rate this one that much.
Oh, interesting. No, I actually caught myself bobbing my head to this track when it came in. Like, I didn't expect it, and about 30 seconds in I was like, yo, I'm liking this. And the lower voice filter works really well. Strangely, I had to Google to see if it was a feature because it didn't even sound like Matty. The delivery of the lyrics sounded very different, but yeah, altogether, you know what, this is a top tier track.
Things we love to see. Tonight, I Wish I Was Your Boy. This is probably one of my least favourite on the album, to be honest. It feels quite repetitive, doesn't feel unique in any way. It's just a track that exists. Again, I wouldn't say it's like the most horrible track ever, but I don't think it adds anything to the album.
What I've got is almost verbatim what you've just said. There's not a whole lot to say. Wasn't a huge fan. It's a simple song, but that doesn't mean it's terrible.
And then we move on to Shiny Collarbone. Give me your thoughts.
This goes unnecessarily hard. This just goes... Everything about this track is so subverting your expectations of what you could expect from the 1975. When the beat changes at around 2 minutes in, I didn't expect there to be a bass line kick in, and there fucking is, and it powers through. And honestly, it's so hard for me to comprehend this as a 1975 track.
Yeah, you wouldn't ever have thought this would come from them. And to be honest, not only this, but tracks like Nothing Revealed / Everything Denied, I think that this album was a way for the other band members to really like have their moment, because I know that George, who's the drummer, is heavily involved in a lot of like this style of track, and he's proved how talented he is with a track like Shiny Collarbone.
This is easily my favourite track off the album.
Oh,
easily.
Big shout. I respect it. Then we move on to unarguably the biggest track on the album, the one that everyone loves, and that's If You're Too Shy. What do you think of this, Tim?
It's a classic 1975 song. It's not my cup of tea, but I can completely understand why people like it. And I will admit, as much as I hate to admit it, it's got a really fucking catchy hook. A really catchy hook.
It's got a really catchy hook. It's got banging trumpets throughout. Do you know what? I think, especially live, the vibes for this song are immaculate every single time. I think this is a huge track, and I can see why it's done so well, how palatable it is for a lot of people. I get the popularity of it. It's not actually my favourite on the album, but it is very, very good.
Yeah, I don't think much more needs to be said about that. So we move on to Playing on My Mind. And for me, I don't really feel like Matty's vocals, as much as I don't like them, just in general, they don't fit a ballady type track for me. It doesn't seem like they lend themselves properly to it. And just overall, this isn't my cup of tea, unfortunately.
You see, I quite like this one in comparison to a lot of the other slower tracks. And I think it's because it's a song that I've heard a bunch of times, and I actually just quite like some of the things that have been said in it. Like, I actually jotted down a few lyrics because, do you know when you're listening and you go, no, I actually completely agree with that? Like, personally, there's one that says, let's find something to watch, then watch our phones half the time. And it just, like, I just do that all the time. You know, when you're with your partner or whatever, or family, and you're watching a film and everyone's just sat on the phone. And then there was another one that said, but I won't get close online because I get worried about the fit, but that rule don't apply concerning my relationships. And I thought that's also like, I know they're pretty simple lines, but I think when you dive a little bit deeper into this song, you can I found bits that I appreciate anyway.
Would you say the terminology simple but effective works nicely with the lyrics?
Yeah, like it's just stuff that everyone thinks. You have it all the time when you're watching a film with someone and you're into it and they're sat on the phone and you're like, oh,
you keep looking over like, and you have to pause it and go, did you see that bit? Have you seen what's happening? Because this is a pivotal part of the movie. Yeah, I completely get that. Moving off this, we go on to what? No head?
Having no head. This is the longest track on the album at 6 minutes long. And to be honest, for the first little bit, I was thinking, I didn't really remember what it was like from listening originally years ago. But I think as it gets on and into the later sections of the track, I really enjoyed this.
This made me need a wee. there's like a trickling water sound throughout it after like a minute or so, and it just really made me need the toilet. But also the track as a whole kind of made me feel like I was in like, you know, like a space museum, listening to a talk about this, and this is the Orion's belt over the top. But it did pick up after 3 minutes, which unfortunately is the length of a normal track. So I was almost at the point where I was like, I don't know if I can be arsed with this anymore. And I'm glad I listened it out, because from 4 minutes onwards, it's actually really good. The first whole section of it, I could throw it away. The last 2 minutes, I was like, you know what? They've done something here.
To me, this sounded like just the band jamming in a studio and putting something together, and this is what came out. Like, the first couple minutes was the build-up, which I agree, as I said at the start, I didn't appreciate. But the culmination of the song, fantastic and saves it. And then we go on to What Should I Say? What do you say about that?
The high-pitched voice off the bat it doesn't feel right. I'm not a fan. It's very bizarre.
For me, this is just like a house track. Don't love it, don't hate it. It's just okay, but it's quite repetitive as well. I think if there were a different style drop or a different element to it, this could go up the rankings, but because there isn't, it's just there.
So if you told me that the 1975 attempted to make a club banger, this is exactly how I would envision it. And it's not my cup of tea, but it's not the worst thing in the world, I'll admit that.
Then we go on to Bagsy Not In Net, something I've said many times in my childhood when in fact, no, I was a goalkeeper. That doesn't really make sense. But what did you think of that?
Boring. It's a bit of an unpurposeful filler track, and that's not to say there's been other filler tracks on this, like what was it called? Streaming. Those ones where they kind of felt like they had more of a purpose. This one felt like it was just there for the sake of being there. It was a bit of a throwaway track. I didn't really care for it.
Literally on this one, I've got not my favourite, bored me slightly, which is just facts. I don't think it's one of the best songs at all. Then we go on to Don't Worry.
Bit of a heartfelt track, this one. I didn't really like it, but I felt the emotion in the track itself. I could feel that coming through. Not my cup of tea. I've said that 1,000 times for a lot of these tracks, but I didn't really hate it that much. I just thought, it's not for me, but I can appreciate it.
For me, this sounded like something you'd hear in a church almost.
Yeah, there's a lot of those gospel-y vibes throughout the album, to be fair. There's a lot of tracks that feature actual gospel singers as well.
This, having listened to the 1975's latest album, Being Funny in a Foreign Language, is kind of more the direction they went down in that album, but they'd clearly mastered it. I think that this was that kind of experiment. Oh, we like this style of music. Let's put it out there, see what people think. And it's okay, but it's not my favourite. And then we're on to the album closer, Guys.
This ends the album on a classic 1975 track, and it makes sense to me as a way to close out the album. It kind of like returns to the band's roots, kind of, is in that realm of that kind of track. And yeah, I think it closes out the album nicely. I do think it puts a nice cap on it and just kind of goes, there's your package.
I think the content of this song's quite important because it's Matty talking about the band and talking about how like they're his best friends and, you know, living abroad together and etc. And I think for an album that's so experimental and clearly gives everyone in the band a moment to shine, I think this was the perfect way to end the album. And also from a personal point of view, this came out in COVID. And I remember actually missing my friends and listening to this and being like, yeah, I miss the homies. And that's exactly what this is about. So I always have a lot of respect for this song. And I think it does close it out nicely. But do you want to give some thoughts on the album as a whole?
I was pleasantly surprised, I will say that. There's a very wide range of appeal across the album as a whole. Although there is a lot of bloating, unfortunately. There's a lot of tracks that maybe run on for too long. They overstay their welcome. There's a few filler tracks in there that I thought, you know, bin those off, get rid of those. But as a whole, despite the different genres used, we've touched on this, it flows really nicely. I don't think it's that incoherent, but for me, I would say it's more of like a playlist than it is an album.
Yeah, I really like this. It's good because I find songs from different genres that I think are very good within that set genre throughout this album. I do agree. I think if you cut out 3 or 4 songs, it'd be even better. But the question is, was it that bad?
No, it wasn't that bad. What do you think? Do you think it was that bad?
No, I don't think it was at all. And I think the general public perception of this album as time has gone on has also changed.
For me, I can completely understand why 1975 fans might not enjoy this album, because I feel like cohesion and theme is a very strong thing amongst their other releases. So having this album that felt more like like I say, a playlist and a lot more genres and a lot more different testing of stuff. I get why if you were coming to this expecting a 1975 album and you got this, you'd be disappointed, and I can completely understand it.
Well, I'm happy with your opinions on this one, but what would you rate it out of 10?
So for me, this is going in at a 5.5, which is way higher than I would think I could ever rate a 1975 album.
I think that's still disgustingly low.
Do you reckon?
Yeah. I would give this a 7 out of 10.
Do you not think a 5.5 coming from me as a 1975 album that's pretty respectful?
Yeah, it's okay. It's okay.
You got to remember, half the tracks on this I was not a fan of because they were the 1975 classics, and that for me doesn't vibe. All the tracks on this album that were the experimental ones, absolutely fantastic. But like I've always said, I enjoy the band. I enjoy the instruments and everything in there. It's just the guy at the front that I just can't get on side with. It's just not for me.
Well, I can get on side with, hence the higher rating. But if you enjoyed this video, please remember to like and subscribe. We're going to be doing a lot more of these Was It That Bad? We might even be throwing in a Was It That Good? Where we look at some artists' best albums and re-review them and see how good they were. But yeah, thanks for watching.
Thank you very much.